All right. Well, today we've got a couple of questions on the show, but we have a very interesting discussion going on our Facebook group, which is called the Fans of the Beat Your Jeans podcast.
Yeah.
And a while ago, one of our listeners started this Facebook group, and it's grown since then. And we have all these kind of fun discussions about every topic you can think of. We recently had a listener who's getting close to finishing a tool where you can actually search for transcripts of all of the episodes that we have. So if if Dr. Lisle says a particular phrase that you like, you can type it in, and it'll tell you which episode that you said it in. But
God, that's great.
We've had a recent discussion from a couple of shows back where you talked about the 10 paid dates rule, and we've decided to talk a little bit about it to clarify, because some of the men in the group are just curious and they want to hear it more from the man's perspective. So just to give a little background to the 10 paid dates rule, it's basically that, Dr. Lisle, what you're suggesting is that when a man is enamored with a girl, they will be perfectly fine to hold out for months and maybe whatever it takes. And so as a result, if the girl does delay sex with the man, she's essentially weeding out the males who at first, are not really interested in pair bonding with her at all. And that takes care of most of the men who are not going to pair bond. But then an extra few dates also weeds out the men who are faking being into her pair bond strategy. They're just part of their psychology is to fake it, so that and then later, 3 months later, so when they're dating, they right away lose interest. So your strategy is for the girl to delay as much as humanly possible, so that you can weed out men who are not willing to pair bond. Did I get some of that right? I think.
Yeah, you got most of it right. Let's try to clear my throat one more time. This is from a man's perspective. This is not a strategy for you. This is a strategy to be played on you. And the probably the most common there's sort of two. There's a twin set of deceptions that go on in man-woman dynamics. Two common strategies. They are mirror images of one another. The one strategy is for the male to pretend that he is pair bonding to the female in order to access her sexual treasury. So this is just all about the male. Essentially, this is sort of the cost per unit of genetic reproduction. And so casual mating strategy, you wouldn't necessarily call these things casual versus pair bond. Those are 2 points on a continuum. It's really about the amount of paternal investment that a male would make in an offspring. And so from the standpoint of a male would be exceedingly interested in getting a minimum amount of investment per offspring. Now, you could break that down a little bit further if you wanted to realize that the chances of an offspring are simply related to how many sex acts there are. So in nature, there's about 20 intercourse events or intercourse days where there's intercourse are going to be associated with about with one reproduction, more or less. It's about it's not quite that, but it's 5% per male orgasm, more or less. Now, so in principle, what the male is engineered to do, not just in humans but throughout the animal kingdom, is going to be to try to minimize the cost per sex act. So you could use a statistic invented by my good friend Larry called the CPSA, or cost per sex act. Okay. So you could also think from the other side, what a female's job to do is to try to get the maximum amount of cost or resources per sex act. So the male and female are inherently designed to be on opposite sides of this problem. So the casual mating strategy is the male's strategy to try to have the CPSA as low as possible, and the pair bond strategy is really a female strategy towards attempting to get the maximum amount of resources per sex act. That's what it is. Now, somewhere in here, there are a bunch of dynamics around how this is sort of best played out or optimally played out. And so you can see, and now we're getting down into the weeds of evolutionary game theory. So it's going to turn out that, if all the females would hold out X amount, then the males are going to have to pony up more, et cetera. But it turns out that there's never going to be much in the way of a conspiracy among the females, because just like OPEC, they'll sell each other out in nothing flat. Okay, just as you would expect. Okay, so if all the guys had a game that said we're not going to feed any of these females a free meal, are you kidding me? We just chat them up, and if they want to get laid, great. If they don't, walk the other way. Well, there's going to be a guy that says, well, honey, you want to have a nice dinner first, and we'll just chat over a nice dinner, and I'll take care of it for you. Yeah, he just sold out all of his friends, okay, because now he's signaling a willingness to invest. So it's going to turn out that this dynamic of CPSA is going to be played out all over the place. This is going to be the great dilemma of human nature. And the reason why it's going to be the great dilemma of human nature as opposed to other animals, why human nature and its psychology around love, romance, and sex is going to be such a cacophony of emotional noise, is going to be because we find ourselves between two different mating strategies that are common in nature, either a pair bond strategy or a casual mating strategy. And so the vast majority of animals are casual mating. A minority of animals are pair bond strategy, and human beings find themselves smack in the middle. And so every guy that I've ever talked to that was honest, that was heterosexual, I've met some dishonest ones who act clueless, like they don't know what I'm talking about. But among the 99% of males that I've ever talked to that have any willingness to be honest, they are smack dab in the middle of this thing. And it's a never-ending mess. In other words, even if they're pair bonded to a given female and are really attracted to her, like her, they still have their head turned by potential casual mating strategy prospects, and they still feel the tug there. Of course they should. This is the nature of the design of the organism. The organism should be on the lookout. If you're a male organism, you should be on the lookout for reproducing DNA cheaply if you can get away with it. So so this is human nature, and so their human nature and their relationships have conflicts that are not typical throughout the animal kingdom. So casual mating strategy, the conflict is not between male and female, particularly the conflict is between male and male. On casual mating strategies, a few males will do all, basically the lion's share of the mating, literally and figuratively. A male lion who's the head of a lion pride is doing almost all of the mating. So this issue of conflict winds up being much more essentially intrasexual conflict among males. It is not conflict among females. Females are perfectly peaceful with each other and are not, in fact, competing with each other. As you go to the other side of the continuum, you're going to have pair bonds where, again, the conflicts are minimized. Essentially, it is essential that both the male and female work very, very diligently together in order to raise a family. And so in those situations, you don't have the degree of conflicts that you see in humans. Because humans are in the middle, our mating strategies are rife with conflict. And so 10 paid dates is just, I don't know why I said 10. Could have said 7. I could have said 20, okay? 10 was my eyeball estimate, and it's a nice round number because you can, you got like 10 digits, so you can like put a little mark on each of your fingers each time this guy ponied up money to pay a check. Okay, it's like easy to keep track of here. Okay, and conceptually it's easy to keep track of, and it actually takes us through a story of 10 exposures, intimate psychological exposures between a male and female, where they get time to talk for a couple, 3 hours. And they get to find out who that other person is, what they're like. They get to do a lot of cross-examination. And they get to see, they get to do a pretty good assessment of IQ and the Big Five, okay, as well as other things that are important to the individual outside of those. And so as a result, you get to see, for example, sooner or later you're going to probably find out what somebody's politics are. Sooner or later you're going to find out what their religion is, okay? And we're going to find out how important to them it is if there's conflicts between us, and how important it is to you if there's conflicts between you. And all of these things are swirling around in, what are we talking about, 30 hours of interaction or 50? Now, if you're a female, it's wise to not expose yourself to a 5% chance of pregnancy before you've had a pretty decent assessment of what it is that you could be getting into. Now, the modern woman says, well, come on, aren't you behind the times? We have a thing called birth control, for goodness sakes. Fabulous. Okay? Birth control is the most important innovation in history for human happiness, other than what? The Constitution of the United States. Okay? This is incredible. This is
so
the
Constitution
most
is like birth control for the government? Yeah. Sorry, I distracted you. I apologize for interrupting.
That's just beautiful, mate. It's just absolutely beautiful. Yeah, that's just great. So anyway, the point is that of course you have birth control, and of course that you can essentially let your guard down and just roll with the punches. And if you're weak in the knees, you can have an exciting time if you're female, and not be essentially irresponsible with your future. Now, you have to understand, if you didn't have birth control, this would be unbelievably irresponsible. Okay, it would be insane to mate with somebody after you've met them 2 or 3 times, 2 or 3 dates, just because you're attracted to them, and then you're going to mate with them, and then you've got a really decent shot of being pregnant in a couple of weeks if you have sex with the guy 5 or 6 times over the next couple of weeks. So within 33 days of meeting somebody, you're pregnant. Okay? That guy decides, you know what, not that in love with you after all. See you later, babe. And now you're stuck. You got 20 years of child raising ahead of you as a single mother. Okay, now that's just flat out irresponsible. And so do people do that? Of course they do. You see them all over the place. Okay, in poverty. So this is, poverty was how it was in the Stone Age. It's what we call a subsistence living. And I always find it amusing to read cultural anthropologists wax, poetic about how much easier it is in Stone Age environments and how happy everybody is. That is complete BS. That is not true at all. The fact that the people aren't just absolutely miserable in their state is kind of remarkable. It's like, okay, it's a tough little animal. It can tough it out. But no, they are not happier. That is not how it is. That's not an honest accounting of what's actually taking place there. It is no great shakes to be a female who's been impregnated by a casual mating strategy player who has no interest in hanging around and being a father. Okay? So, 10 paid dates is essentially a top level down defense for female psychology, saying, listen, let's not get played by a casual mating strategy player just because we can protect ourselves with birth control. Okay, because it's going to turn out that very often you can protect yourself physically by birth control, but you can't protect yourself emotionally that well, because you're actually designed to be in those situations to essentially be getting drawn in emotionally and getting connected. And then to get dumped unceremoniously very quickly afterwards isn't that easy. Okay. Now, is it terrible? Is it a tragedy? No. Okay. But 10 paid dates is a simply prudent defense. It's the equivalent of having, for example, to tell a young person, it'd be a really good idea for you to save $10,000 before you take a trip to Europe. Put it in the bank, okay? Now you have a buffer zone against all kinds of little misfortunes. Now you got a problem with your car and you need a new transmission. It's going to cost you $2,500. It doesn't bankrupt you, okay? It turns out that you need a root canal and it's going to be $700 over and above your health insurance. It doesn't bankrupt you. It's good to have essentially a buffer zone between you and tragedy. That's why you want to have money in the bank. Does everybody do it? No. And as a result, what do? They ride on the edge of trouble, and they have anxiety about it. And then when little tragedies strike, they're scurrying around to try to cheat their way around things, and they wind up with trouble. They wind up with bad teeth and bad cars, okay? And irresponsible work histories because, unreliable people have unreliable cars. So this is that was just a saying I heard once that I thought had some value in it, but it's really not that good. Okay, but the point is that it makes sense to be prudent and do something that you wouldn't naturally do, which is to save $10,000 before you go off and blow the next $3,000, traipsing through France. So this is a buffer zone approach to stress management. It's essentially mitigating the impact of negative things. And one of the things that we would just soon do if you're a woman is not wind up emotionally and physically potentially vulnerable to somebody that you don't know that well. That's what 10 paid dates is about. And 10 paid dates is also, the emphasis is on paid, not that you don't offer to pay and watch what happens once in a while on date 3 or date 4. But what you're wanting to do is you're wanting to essentially, the baseline social process that's going on here is that he's investing, that it's his job to try to make this thing interesting, and it doesn't have to be expensive. It should be somehow commensurate with obviously his income and what he's comfortable with. But we are watching him and whether or not he is in an investment process. And if he's in an investment process, he doesn't have a problem with an investment process. He is actually finding you more valuable as time goes on because he's observing that he barely qualifies. And if he barely qualifies, that's really good, because when very similar people to him are at the campfire with you when he's out on a hunt, they are not going to be able to get to the eggs. Okay, this is important. Now, of course it's true that she may roll over behind weak knees delta. Let's suppose our lovebirds are a pair of 8s, and he's having a hard time getting to the eggs, but she's interested. She gives him really good feedback, but she doesn't roll over for 6 weeks. Now, the truth is, now what has he learned? He's learned now that he's got an established pair bond. He's learned that when he goes away for a hunt, she's not going to be shacking up with the next 8 that comes by and gives her a good line and takes her out on the dance floor for a spin. No, those eggs are under defense. Now, of course, it's possible that she gets weak in the knees behind a 10, but let's look at her. The truth is, look at how slowly she moved. Look at how careful she is with her sexuality. Okay? The truth is that she's probably not going to roll over for the 10 very easily, because that's probably just not how she rolls. All right? So so ironically, if you defend the eggs for a while, you are actually going to be seen as more valuable by a pair bonder. You are seen as less valuable by a casual mating strategy player, who becomes increasingly frustrated, sends signals of anger and disgust, and is sending signals of trying to cheap you out to reduce his CPSA. That's what he's doing. Okay? So the 10 paid dates is not a strategy for the male, for God's sake. So if males are scratching their heads trying to figure out what this all means, relax. This wasn't meant for you. You are the problem. 10 paid dates is the solution. Okay? 10 paid dates is a prescription for women. That's what it's for. And the reason why I'm interested in that prescription is because really what this is we're trying to aim, at least from my standpoint, and like as I've said before on numerous occasions, there could be other perspectives that a person would have when it would come to optimizing one's life experience. So you could think of a guy saying, listen, I don't care about what you think, but I'm out to rack up a big score. I've got at least 100 on my wall of little boxes I want to check before I check out of here, maybe 250. Okay? Fair enough. Okay? But from my particular perspective, what I consider to be the most exquisite potential of human life is going to be romance. The most exquisite potential is going to be a phenomenon that we're going to call true love. And what that is that is a paradoxical state where one person's happiness is causing the other person's happiness. And this is as a result of the potential of human psychology as a result of mirror neurons. So true love is when you need to be honest with each other and will be honest with each other about what's going on inside your head, because each person is so interested in what's going on inside the other person's head because they want to know how it is to please them. And they want to know how to please them because when that other partner is pleased, it causes happiness inside you, okay? You can imagine relationships on a continuum of deception. And on the far left of a line segment, we're going to say that the interests of these two people are diametrically opposed. They are, in fact, either competitors or enemies. And on the other side, on the far side of the continuum, this is going to be a stellar or exquisite relationship, the best that it gets. This is love. So you're going to realize that beneath that line segment, and incidentally, that line segment is going to be, that continuum is going to be defined by the concept of whether or not your genetic interests are aligned. So if your genetic interests are not aligned at all, they are totally skew. They're in opposite directions, actually. If they're in opposite directions, you are enemies, effectively. If they are exactly parallel, you are in a perfect kind of a situation. Now, in between, you're going to see that there's going to be varying degrees of how much your interests are aligned. Now, underneath that line segment, there's going to be another line segment that runs parallel to it underneath it. And on the far left, and that line segment is going to be how much deception is going to be called for in this situation. When your interests are diametrically opposed, when you are attempting to defend your city from Caesar, you want to be as deceptive as possible. You want Caesar to be totally fooled about what it is that you're doing. So your motivation is misinformation. If you have found the love of your life, what you want is something completely opposite. You want to be as transparent as possible so that you understand what it is that they like and what it is that they want so that you can give it to them. And the reason you want that is because you want to see their happiness. And the reason you want to see their happiness is it causes your happiness because it activates mirror neurons. Okay? So this is a magnificent paradox that sits inside of human potential. Everybody sniffs it. Everybody intuitively seeks it. It's going to turn out that the more disagreeable you are by nature, the less easy this comes to you. Okay? Very disagreeable people have a difficult time even getting here. And that is that they're too interested in gaming the system. So you can imagine that down in the middle of this curve, both of these curves, is going to be what we call normal trade relations. So now you're talking to a plumber, okay? You hope he's going to be reasonably honest with you. If the bill sounds like it's too high, then you're going to feel like, you know what, I don't think he's telling me the truth. I'm going to get a second plumber. I'm going to get a second opinion. And you know what, I may get a third opinion before I pony up my $5,000 for this problem. Okay? Now, so it's going to but for example, as trades move towards more honesty, then it's going to turn out that you can get these repetitive trades that work really well, and you don't have to spend as much time checking about whether they're honest. So you reduce the transaction costs of finding out whether or not you're being deceived. Okay? This is going to be better trades, whether it's friends or in romance. Okay? You can see the possibility of having a situation where you don't have to check. All you have to do is ask. Okay? All you have to do is try to figure out where the other person's at. among wonderful people that get together beautifully, you wind up with a very interesting thing, which is that, where do you want to go to dinner? Hey, it's wherever you want to go. Because what's most important to me is whether or not you're happy. Okay? That's a beautiful potential that sits inside of some people. Other people it doesn't sit inside of. They're just literally not capable of experiencing that. This program and my philosophy and what I'm interested in exploring in life, I'm not really interested in trying to figure out how to game the system. I'm not interested in possibly normal trade relationships that males and females might have within normal mating dynamics that might take place. So, for example, I'm not really interested. I just talked to a woman today, that told me that she had a counselor for a couple of months who is instructing her on how to snag a man for marriage. Okay, and that's what this woman does. That's what this counselor does, is instructs women on how it is to do this. Incredible. Okay, it's like, wow, what are you getting? Is this the end that you seek? Okay, because if that's the end that you seek, I have absolutely no interest in learning any of the nuances of how someone might do such a thing. Because in no way does this lead us to this beautiful, loving paradox that I know is possible for human beings. Okay? In the same way, I'm not really interested in how males can play females behind casual mating strategies so that they can get access to their sexual treasury and then disappear over the hill because they don't give a damn about them. Couldn't care less, not interested. Are there techniques that you could use that might be more effective? Sure. Just in exactly the way con men use techniques in order to sell little old lady swampland. Not interested. Okay? So 10 paid dates is simply an understanding that what we're seeking here, from my perspective, if I'm speaking to women now, I'm seeking to help you try to not waste your precious time and energy on potential relationships that have no possibility of having a loving paradox. Okay? So we're going to smoke out the people for whom you don't really qualify for, who already know you don't qualify as a pair bond, and get rid of them. That's what you're going to do. We're going to eliminate the gaming system that will exist in females where, well, if the guy comes on kind of casual and he's pretty fancy and she's a little weak in the knees, then she acts like she's willing to play casual, but the truth is she's not willing to play casual. She really isn't. Okay? The truth is she's trying to drag him into a pair bond as per some coach, okay? Or the coach of evolution that says, boy, if there's somebody that's fancier than you that's coming towards you and looks like they have some interest, go ahead and lure them in here and then try to grab their feet and stick them into a tar pit and not let them go, okay? That's the alternative or mirror image strategy to male casual mating strategy. So where the male pretends that he's pair bonding, but he's not. All of these things, all of these strategies and their permutations are steps away from the possibility of finding a truly loving paradox. And so that's what I'm interested in, because I'm interested in the highest potentials for human nature and the best experiences that people can have. If you actually look at human sexuality and you actually look at the peak experience that would be possible probably for human beings, there would be many. Watching your kid to walk, watching them graduate from high school, all kinds of things. I don't know, petting my cat comes pretty close. But if you think about the most exquisite sex that a person is likely to have, one of them would be to be with somebody so much more attractive than yourself that all of your bells are going off in your head, that this is just this exquisite specimen. That would be one thing, okay? But here's another. How about if you're in a situation where you fully qualify, the other person fully qualifies for a pair bond, and now we're in a situation where we are in a loving paradox that, watch what happens sexually. What happens is that what you want to know is that the other person is really happy, and what they want to know is that you're really happy. How about that? Okay? That process is the process where conflicts of interest between male and female have been minimized. That's what that is. Under the most ideal possible circumstances for what? Reproductive activity. This is the genes giving us a clue, talking through the ages, telling you this is the best set of circumstances. This is actually the most efficient, optimal circumstances under which DNA is reproduced. Okay? This is why males, even if they're rich, are not too interested in just getting, cocaine head hookers that are super attractive and having sex with a bunch of them. Do some of these guys do this? Of course they do. As you can see that their nervous systems would be flooded with the excitement of very, very sexy mates, okay, by a casual mating strategy. We can see why there's hooker boats all over the Caribbean where wealthy men will do this. However, when we see the average man and what it is that's going on in his head, it speaks of a nervous system that throughout evolution has actually sought the loving paradox. That's why they are willing to go to movies. That's why they can hear love songs and respond to them, because they actually have mirror neurons enough that crave for this situation. And in that situation, they crave to be transparent in what their motivation is, have the other person read it, and have both of them respond to trying to figure out how to make the other person happy. That's what we're trying to do, and 10 paid dates is a way to try to have people save their time and energy away from distractions that would keep them away from searching for a fabulous individual with whom they could share that experience.
Fascinating.
All right.
This makes perfect sense to me. And, every episode or so, I'm always curious if I could search Google and see what terms were searched after our shows, which ones that would be. And I think this week it's going to be hooker boats all over the Caribbean. So the Caribbean. One of us is getting targeted advertising
on the Caribbean.
That's for sure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in the Caribbean.
All right.
Yeah. All right. That's fascinating, Dr. Lisle, because this makes sense to me. Like I've told you before, but some of these comments on Facebook, on the Facebook group, I'm going to read them just so we can, I'll have a chuckle, but again, it's not a personal comment, and I'm withholding the names from the people who made these comments. There's a couple of people who are, obviously joking. So one guy asked, what's the rule? Can you refresh our memories? And this guy says, the rule is if they don't put out by date 10, dump them on the curb.
Very good. All right, fair enough.
But another comment that actually, it really represents, I think, some of the frustration from some of the men is the following. If you wait 10 dates for someone who you want to spend the rest of your life with, you might spend the rest of your life with somebody who isn't really aroused by you.
Let's look at it this way. I think that I can sort of understand that inference, but I don't think that really washes, because the truth is that women can signal interest without actually having to have sex with people, and so it isn't like they might not be interested, and they might not be quite interested. But there's a difference between being interested and actually taking the steps and having the agreement and having sex take place. Do I think it's a crime or a terrible mistake if some people have sex on date 4? No. Good luck to you. Okay? Let's hope that it isn't a typical situation, and the typical situation is where somebody doesn't qualify. Is where that's probably where that relationship is going. So my whole point is, why don't we save ourselves the emotional upheaval and irritated female scorn by just let's withhold a few more weeks. Let's just play it a little bit more carefully. But the notion that some woman is going to stick around and be continually interested in seeing a guy that she is basically not interested in is absurd. And the notion that she's going to go to the altar and marry somebody that she's not interested in is an absurd. And incidentally, we're not going to be making some decision about some lifetime possible partner, 18 weeks into this thing. Are you kidding me? A reasonable set of prescriptions for the way a relationship ought to unfold is we spend a few weeks getting to know each other before we sleep together. If we start sleeping together and we really, really like it, good. Keep doing it for a year. okay? But don't move in, for God's sakes. Let's not integrate our existence and get our finances all hooked up together and then wind up, having the economies of scale, unless it turns out that both people are financially very strong and that's what they want to do, and they feel, and they're essentially, they're both emotionally stable and just sufficiently disagreeable that they could leave or kick the person out, after 7 months when they're not happy. That's a bunch of conditions that generally aren't going to exist. So it's a good idea to basically have a rule in your head that you're not going to live together for a year, that you're going to continue to spend time together, enjoy each other's company, etc. If it's so great, then it'll be great later, okay? Then you move in together after about a year, and then you find out what? We're still not getting married. We're going to find out whether or not we're really enjoying our existence. You enjoy your existence for a couple of years. Then you discover whether you're married. You don't get married, okay? You get married after you find out you're married. That's how to do it. You don't create, you do not create a relationship, folks. You do not build a relationship. You discover one. Big difference, okay? So it seems like you build a relationship because you have a set of shared experiences, etc. You have memories to call back on. You have frames of reference. All that is true. But that's not what happened. What happened is the only reason you were in those situations to begin with is because you were enjoying the process, and the only reason you were enjoying the process is because it turns out that those two personalities and, looks, brains, personality integration was such that those two people were really enjoying each other's company a great deal. That's what happened. And you don't build that. That emerges spontaneously out of those people's interactions, okay? So there's no rush to anything other than, and there's no reason to put any sticky wicket into any situation. Take your sweet time, let things unfold, and you discover what you have. You don't make what you have.
Fascinating. Dr. Lisle, this is great. You want to do one more question before we end for the evening?
Sure.
Okay, this one has to do with casual mating strategy. Funny enough, just happens to be on the queue today. Dr. Lisle, around 4 years ago, I came out of a long-term relationship after my partner cheated on me. I was in a bad place and felt like I couldn't be worth much as the girl my boyfriend cheated on me with, as she was quite unattractive and well known to sleep around. She had slept with most of his friends and also with his brother. His brother also had a girlfriend at the time. Well, this hit my esteem pretty hard and I was feeling depressed. A month or so after this, a guy I had known for about 10 years expressed interest in me. He was a friend of a friend, hadn't really spoken to him at length and didn't know him well, and had never been attracted to him. But he contacted me about helping out with a homeless charity over Christmas, and we got to chatting. I thought he seemed like a lovely person, and we met up a few times, chatted online, and ended up sleeping together. It happened a couple of times, and then I discovered that he was also trying to sleep with my friend behind her boyfriend's back. Needless to say, it ended there. I later discovered that he's a bit of a player, and he tries this on most women that he meets. Now, we have to be in each other's company on occasion, and it's always awkward. I believe I have an open loop about this situation and would like some help. Was I only interested in him at that point because I was in such a bad place with very low self-esteem, considering that I had known of him for so many years and never quite found him attractive? I now have no romantic feelings towards him. However, when he's around or comes up in conversation, I feel embarrassed and ashamed. Can I ever get rid of this feeling? He is always really awkward around me, won't make eye contact or even say hello. However, he tries to be best friends with my current boyfriend, hangs on to his every word and follows him around like a lost puppy. Why is he doing this? I do my best to avoid him, but next year we are both part of a wedding and we'll have to spend time in each other's company on multiple occasions. And I just don't want it to be awkward. And I don't want to feel disgusted with myself being reminded that I had a fling with this guy. Any help would be greatly appreciated.
Oh, man.
Great question.
This is a big story. This is kind of one of these deals. There's so many moving parts to it that it's hard to be definitive because behind a lot of her comments are things that we'd need to question further and find out what she's thinking and why. But I can guesstimate that what will very often happen if you've been rejected, and it sounds like her boyfriend cheated on her, and then I can't tell whether or not he rejected her or whether or not she ended the relationship. I can't tell. Was that in the text? I can't remember.
Yeah, she ended the relationship after she found out that her boyfriend cheated on her, and her self-esteem took a hit because the girl that the boyfriend cheated on was chippy, was less attractive than she was, so she felt less worth.
Right.
Less worthy.
Got it. Okay. So what happens is that your self, which is a calibration device, basically gets thrown for a loop, because from your perspective, this less attractive person has somehow been sufficiently attractive as to outrank you potentially in your boyfriend's head. And so that may be a possibility. That is one inference that one could make from that. And it's not the only inference one could make, but it's an inference that one very well might make. And so it's interesting that she ended the relationship. Obviously, I mean, it's not necessarily that interesting, but the relationship ends. Now, what happens at that point is that her calibration equipment is a little confused, and so now this guy's circulating around who is probably not as fancy as her previous partner, but she wants to see sort of how hard this guy is chomp at the bit if she just waves a little bit of bait in front of him, and it looks like he bites pretty hard. Okay, now so it's not like she's all interested in him, but she's sort of interested in how hard he takes the bait. And what this is what I call touching the bottom of the pool. When you get in a pool, if you're not so sure about how good a swimmer you are or how cold the water is or anything else, you essentially want to know where the bottom of the pool is. So sometimes you have to go down in the pool to touch the bottom, and then you're like, okay, there it is. I can push myself off the bottom and get myself back up, and I'm safe. So this will happen when people have taken a hit and have essentially taken some negative feedback. They're now a little bit confused about their mate value, and so they'll go down and touch the bottom of the pool and make sure that, yes, indeed, I'm probably solidly above this guy because he was very interested very quickly. Okay, he didn't need to find out much more about me other than I'd be kind of interested, and then boom, he's jumping. Now you might say, little strange tactic for a female because all that was casual mating. But even females will use casual mating to check their own attractiveness, just to see how interested and how ardent some guy is, et cetera. And so this is what I think that this person did. And so then she quickly, amazingly enough, finds out that this guy is just Mr. Casual Mating Strategy in total, realizes this is an absurd situation, that certainly she didn't need to find out for her own self-esteem that she qualified as casual mate, for God's sakes. And so she dumps him immediately, and that's the end of it. Now, for the rest of it, I'd have to think through why he could be a little bit worried that she's disgusted with him, and therefore he may be in trouble a little bit politically in the village from her potential wrath in some ways, and so as a result, he's sidling up to her boyfriend to try to essentially show belly, so that therefore the new boyfriend, if he finds out that you're irritated with him, that the new boyfriend won't, take out his club and smack him over the head. So there can be some Stone Age, essentially obsequious behavior that's taking place there. That would make a little bit of sense. So he's essentially a little bit worried about her anger towards him. So I could see that's how that's working out. As far as how you're going to manage these situations, I'd have to map it out with this person because I'd have to know a few more details. But, this is all kind of uncomfortable stuff, and once again, a great reason for 10 paid dates.